Min Jun Kim stood nervously at the entrance of Lincoln High School, clutching his backpack tightly. The building loomed large before him, its red brick walls seeming both welcoming and intimidating. It was his first day in a new country, a new
school, and he already felt out of place. His family had moved from Seoul to this small American town for his father's job, leaving behind everything familiar. As Min Jun walked through the hallways, students stared curiously at him, whispering among themselves. He could hear fragments of their conversations. Is that the Korean kid? What's his name again? Feeling self-conscious, he kept his head down and hurried to his first class. When Min Jun entered Mr. Peterson's history classroom, all eyes turned toward him. The teacher, a tall man with thinning hair and an air of authority, looked up from his desk. "Ah, you must be our new student," he said, gesturing for Min Jun to take a seat. Min Jun nodded shyly and slid into the back row, hoping to avoid attention. But fate had other plans. After taking attendance, Mr. Peterson began introducing the topic of the day, World War II, and then paused dramatically. "Before we dive in, let's get to know each other better," he announced, turning to face the class. "Everyone, introduce yourselves and share something interesting about your background." One by one, the students spoke up. Some talked about hobbies like basketball or painting, while others mentioned quirky facts like having twin siblings or being able to solve a Rubik's Cube in under 2 minutes. When it was finally Min Jun's turn, he hesitated. All eyes were on him now, and he felt the weight of their curiosity pressing down on him. Taking a deep breath, he stood up slowly and introduced himself. "My name is Min Jun Kim," he began, his voice soft but steady. "I'm from Seoul, South Korea." The room grew quieter, as if everyone leaned in slightly to listen more closely. Encouraged by the silence, Min Jun continued. "My grandfather, he was a martial arts master." There were a few murmurs of interest, but nothing too surprising, yet. Then, summoning his courage, Min Jun added, "And Chuck Norris once trained with him." At first, there was a moment of stunned silence. Then laughter erupted throughout the classroom. Students slapped their desks, giggled uncontrollably, and exchanged amused glances. Even Mr. Peterson couldn't hold back a smirk. "Oh, really?" the teacher said, raising an eyebrow skeptically. "So what? Your grandpa taught Chuck Norris how to roundhouse kick people into next week?" The comment sent the room into another wave of laughter, and Min Jun felt his cheeks burn with embarrassment. He sank back into his seat, wishing he could disappear. The teasing didn't stop there. A boy sitting nearby whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Maybe your grandpa also invented karate." Another chimed in, "Or taught Bruce Lee how to jump over buildings." Each joke cut deeper than the last, making Min Jun feel smaller and smaller. Despite the humiliation, Min Jun tried to focus on the positives. Back home in Seoul, he had always been proud of his grandfather's accomplishments. Grandpa Kim wasn't just any martial artist, he was a legend in his own right. People traveled from across Asia to learn from him, and his dojo was renowned for producing some of the finest fighters. Min Jun remembered spending countless afternoons watching his grandfather teach classes, mesmerized by the fluidity and precision of every movement. And yes, Chuck Norris really had visited their dojo decades ago, seeking guidance during his early years as a martial artist. Those memories gave Min Jun strength, even though no one here believed him. As the laughter subsided, Mr. Peterson resumed teaching, but Min Jun barely paid attention. Instead, he stared out the window, thinking about how different life was here compared to Seoul. In Korea, respect for elders and traditions was ingrained in society. Here, it seemed like people cared more about mocking differences than understanding them. Still, Min Jun resolved not to let this incident break him. Deep down, he knew the truth about his grandfather, and someday he hoped others would see it too. By the end of the period, Min Jun had made a silent promise to himself. No matter how many jokes or insults came his way, he wouldn't stay quiet forever. Someday, somehow, he would prove that his story wasn't just a tale. It was a piece of history. Little did he know that opportunity would arrive sooner than he expected, changing not only his life but the lives of those around him. This expanded version adds depth to Min-jun's emotions, provides context about his relationship with his grandfather, and sets the stage for future events while keeping the narrative engaging and relatable. Let me know if you'd like adjustments or further expansions. The bell rang, signaling the end of Mr. Peterson's class, but Min-jun barely noticed. He gathered his books slowly, dreading the walk to his next class. The laughter and mocking comments from earlier still echoed in his mind, making it hard to focus. As he stepped into the hallway, he felt like everyone was staring at him again, whispering behind his back. Some students even mimicked punching motions or fake karate kicks as he passed by, clearly inspired by the jokes made in class. Min-jun kept his head down, clutching his backpack straps tightly, trying to ignore the sting of their teasing. By lunchtime, Min-jun had retreated to a quiet corner of the cafeteria, where no one usually sat. He picked at his food without much appetite, replaying the morning's events over and over in his head. Why had he even mentioned his grandfather? Maybe it was foolish to think anyone here would understand or appreciate his family's legacy. Back in Seoul, people respected martial arts masters like his grandfather. They were seen as pillars of wisdom and discipline. Here, though, it seemed like anything unfamiliar was fair game for ridicule. Just as Min-jun was about to leave the cafeteria early, someone slid onto the bench across from him. It was Alex Carter, another student who often kept to himself. Alex wasn't exactly popular. He wore oversized glasses and carried around stacks of comic books, but he had a kind smile that put people at ease. "Hey," Alex said casually, unwrapping his sandwich. "You're Min-jun, right?" Min-jun nodded hesitantly, unsure what to expect. Was Alex going to make fun of him too? But instead of laughing, Alex leaned forward slightly and said, "I heard what happened in history class. That teacher can be a real jerk sometimes." Relief washed over Min-jun, though he still felt guarded. "Yeah, I guess so," he replied, softly looking down at his tray. Alex tilted his head thoughtfully. "But is it true? About your grandpa and Chuck Norris?" For a moment, Min-jun hesitated. Would Alex believe him? Or would he just laugh like everyone else? Finally, deciding to trust the friendly stranger sitting across from him, Min-jun nodded. "Yes, it's true," he admitted quietly. "My grandfather trained Chuck Norris when he came to Korea years ago. They spent months together practicing techniques my grandpa developed." Alex's eyes widened with genuine interest. "Whoa, seriously? That's amazing. Do you have proof or something?" Min-jun hesitated again before nodding. "My mom keeps some old photos and letters at home. One of them is signed by Chuck Norris himself." "Wow," Alex breathed, clearly impressed. "That's incredible. You should show those to people. If they saw the evidence, maybe they'd stop laughing." Min-jun shook his head sadly. "Even if I showed them, they wouldn't believe me. They'd probably just say the pictures are fake or something." Alex frowned, tapping his fingers on the table. "Maybe," he conceded after a moment. "But you shouldn't let them win. People like Mr. Peterson thrive on making others feel small because it makes them feel bigger. Don't give him that power." Min-jun looked up, surprised by Alex's words. No one had ever said anything like that to him before. "What do you mean?" he asked cautiously. "I mean," Alex explained, leaning closer, "you don't have to fight back physically or anything. Just stand your ground. Show them you're not ashamed of who you are or where you come from. Sometimes standing up for yourself isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving to yourself that their opinions don't define you." Min-jun mulled this over silently. Standing up to Mr. Peterson sounded terrifying, especially since the teacher seemed to enjoy embarrassing students in front of the entire class. But Alex's words struck a chord deep inside him. What if he could find a way to prove his story without stooping to their level? What if he could turn the tables on the doubters? As the two boys continued talking, Alex offered to help Min-jun practice how to respond confidently if Mr. Peterson brought up the topic again. "Imagine how shocked he'll be when you shut him down calmly," Alex said with a grin. "Besides, wouldn't it be awesome to see the look on his face?" Min-jun couldn't help but smile at the thought. For the first time since arriving in America, He felt a flicker of hope. Maybe Alex was right. Maybe he didn't need to shrink away from the bullies. Maybe he could rise above them. Later that evening, Min-jun rummaged through an old suitcase his mother had packed during the move. Buried beneath clothes and photo albums, he found a small wooden box containing treasures from his grandfather's life, faded photographs, handwritten notes, and a framed letter signed by none other than Chuck Norris. Holding the items in his hands, Min-jun felt a surge of pride. These weren't just mementos. They were pieces of history, proof of his family's remarkable legacy. He carefully placed the box on his desk and studied the letter. In neat cursive, Norris wrote about how much he admired Grandpa Kim's dedication to martial arts and thanked him for sharing his knowledge. Reading the words filled Min-jun with renewed determination. Tomorrow, he decided, things would be different. He wouldn't let Mr. Peterson, or anyone else, mock him without consequence. With Alex's advice echoing in his mind, Min-jun prepared himself for whatever challenges lay ahead. Little did he know, fate had its own plans in store. Unbeknownst to Min-jun, the very person tied to his grandfather's legacy was closer than he could have imagined. And soon, the entire school would bear witness to a moment that would change everything. This expanded version delves deeper into Min-jun's emotional journey, highlights his growing friendship with Alex, and builds anticipation for future developments while maintaining engagement and relatability. Let me know if you'd like further adjustments. The next morning, Min-jun woke up earlier than usual. The sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon, casting a soft golden glow through his bedroom window. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the wooden box he had placed on his desk the night before. Inside were the photographs, letters, and mementos that connected him to his grandfather's legacy. For a moment, he felt a wave of doubt creep in. Was it really worth bringing these things to school? Would anyone care? But then he remembered Alex's words. Don't let them win. Taking a deep breath, Min-jun carefully packed the box into his backpack, determined to face whatever came his way. As he walked to school, the crisp autumn air carried the scent of fallen leaves. Normally, Min-jun enjoyed the peacefulness of mornings like this, but today his mind was racing. What if Mr. Peterson mocked him again? What if the other students laughed even harder when they saw the old photos and letters? Still, something inside him refused to back down. His grandfather had always taught him that courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was acting despite it. Today, Min-jun decided he would honor that lesson. When he arrived at Lincoln High, Alex was waiting for him near the front steps. "Hey," Alex greeted with a grin. "Ready for round 2? Min-jun forced a smile, though his stomach churned. Nervously. "I guess we'll see." Alex patted him on the shoulder reassuringly. "You've got this. Just remember what we practiced last night. Stay calm, speak clearly, and don't let him rattle you." Min-jun nodded, grateful for Alex's support. Together they headed inside and made their way to Mr. Peterson's classroom. As they entered, the teacher was already writing the day's agenda on the board. When he turned around and spotted Min-jun, a sly smirk spread across his face. Well, he said loudly enough for the entire class to hear. "Looks like Chuck Norris Jr. decided to grace us with his presence again." A few students snickered, but Min-jun didn't react. Instead, he took his seat quietly, keeping his focus steady. He knew better than to rise to the bait immediately. Timing was everything. Throughout the lesson, Mr. Peterson occasionally glanced at Min-jun, as if waiting for him to crack under the pressure. But Min-jun remained composed, jotting down notes and pretending not to notice the subtle jabs. Finally, halfway through the period, Mr. Peterson paused mid-lecture and turned to face the class. "So," he began, his tone dripping with sarcasm, "anyone else have any fascinating family stories they'd like to share? Or should we give Min-jun another chance to enlighten us about his legendary grandpa?" The room erupted in laughter once more, but this time, Min-jun didn't shrink away. Slowly he stood up, clutching his backpack strap. The noise gradually died down as everyone realized he intended to say something. Even Mr. Peterson raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued by Min-jun's unexpected boldness. "I'm not here to entertain you," Min-jun began, his voice firm but calm. But since you keep bringing it up, I'll tell you the truth. My grandfather was a martial arts master, and yes, Chuck Norris trained with him in Korea decades ago. It's not a joke. It's part of my family's history. The classroom fell silent, the mocking energy replaced by curiosity. Some students exchanged glances, unsure how to respond. Mr. Peterson crossed his arms, clearly unimpressed. "Oh, really?" he drawled. "And I suppose you have proof of all this?" Without hesitation, Min-jun reached into his backpack and pulled out the wooden box. He opened it carefully, revealing the faded photographs and the framed letter signed, "By Chuck Norris." Holding up one of the pictures, he showed it to the class. In the photo, a young Chuck Norris stood beside Grandpa Kim, both dressed in traditional martial arts uniforms. Their expressions were serious, their stances perfect. "This is my grandfather," Min-jun explained, pointing to the older man in the photo. "And this is Chuck Norris. They spent months training together, and my grandfather shared techniques that helped shape Norris's fighting style. This letter," he held up the framed document, "is from Chuck Norris himself, thanking my grandfather for his guidance." For a moment, no one spoke. The students stared at the items in stunned silence while Mr. Peterson shifted uncomfortably. Finally, someone in the back row muttered, "Whoa, that's actually kind of cool." Another student chimed in, "Wait, so your grandpa really did train Chuck Norris? That's insane." Min-jun nodded, feeling a surge of pride. "Yes, it's true. And I brought these because I wanted to show you that my family's legacy isn't a joke. Martial arts has been a huge part of our culture for centuries, and my grandfather dedicated his life to preserving its traditions. I'm proud of where I come from, and I won't apologize for it." The atmosphere in the room shifted dramatically. Where there had once been mockery, there was now respect, or at least curiosity. Several students leaned forward asking questions about the photos and the training methods. One girl even admitted, "My dad loves Chuck Norris movies. He'd freak out if he heard this story." Mr. Peterson, however, looked increasingly uneasy. Clearly, he hadn't expected Min-jun to produce actual evidence. For a moment, he seemed unsure how to respond. Then, attempting to regain control of the situation, he cleared his throat and said, all right, that's enough. Let's get back to the lesson." But Min-jun wasn't done yet. Standing tall, he addressed the teacher directly. "You can make fun of me all you want, but mocking someone's culture and heritage isn't okay. If you don't believe me, that's fine, but don't treat my story like it's worthless." His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Mr. Peterson opened his mouth to reply, but before he could speak, the classroom door creaked open unexpectedly. Everyone turned to see who had entered, and in that instant, the tension in the room reached its peak. Standing in the doorway was none other than Chuck Norris. This expanded version builds suspense, showcases Min-jun's growth in confidence, and sets the stage for the dramatic entrance of Chuck Norris. It emphasizes emotional depth, cultural pride, and the power of standing up for oneself while keeping the narrative engaging and relatable. Let me know if you'd like further refinements. The classroom door creaked open, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. Standing in the doorway was Chuck Norris, unmistakable even without his signature cowboy hat or action movie bravado. Dressed casually in jeans, a leather jacket, and boots, he looked every bit the legend Min-jun had described, but no one dared believe it at first. The students blinked, unsure if their eyes were playing tricks on them. Was this some kind of prank? A look-alike? But as Chuck Norris stepped inside with an easy smile, there was no mistaking his presence. "Well," Norris said in his calm, gravelly voice, "I heard someone around here was talking about me." The room erupted into chaos. Students gasped, whispered, and stared wide-eyed, while others scrambled to get a better view. Some even pulled out their phones to take pictures, though they quickly realized how surreal and unbelievable this moment was. Even Mr. Peterson, who prided himself on maintaining control, stood frozen behind his desk, his mouth slightly agape. His usual air of authority vanished instantly, replaced by sheer disbelief. Min-jun's heart raced as he locked eyes with the martial arts icon. For a split second, he wondered if this was all a dream. Had he imagined Norris walking into the classroom? But when the legendary fighter glanced at him and gave a small nod, Min-jun knew it was real. This wasn't just any visit. It was the culmination of everything he'd been defending that morning. Chuck Norris strode confidently toward the front of the room, his movements smooth and deliberate. He stopped near Min-jun, turning to face the class. "So," he began, his tone warm but commanding, "who's the guy telling stories about me?" All eyes turned to Min-jun, who suddenly felt like the center of the universe. His cheeks flushed red, but he managed to find his voice. That would be me," he stammered, gesturing awkwardly to himself. "My name is Min-jun Kim. My grandfather trained you in Korea years ago." Norris nodded slowly, his expression softening. "Ah, yes, Grandmaster Kim," he said, his voice filled with genuine respect. "One of the greatest martial artists I've ever had the privilege to learn from." The words hit the room like a thunderclap. Every student sat up straighter, their earlier skepticism melting away. Even Mr. Peterson, still rooted to the spot, seemed unable to process what was happening. Norris continued, addressing the entire class now. "Your friend here isn't exaggerating. I spent months training under Master Kim back in the late 60s. He taught me techniques that became foundational to my career, not just in fighting but in life. His discipline, his philosophy, his dedication, they shaped who I am today." As Norris spoke, Min-jun felt a wave of pride wash over him. It wasn't just vindication, it was validation. Everything he'd said was true, and now the world, or at least this small corner of it, knew it too. The other students listened intently, hanging on every word. One boy whispered audibly, "This is insane." Another girl muttered, "I can't believe this is actually happening." Norris then turned his attention directly to Mr. Peterson, whose face had gone pale. "You must be the teacher," Norris said, his tone polite but firm. "I couldn't help overhearing your comments earlier. You sounded pretty skeptical about Master Kim's influence on my life." Mr. Peterson stammered, clearly flustered. I didn't mean anything by it, Mr. Norris. It's just, well, these kinds of stories are hard to believe sometimes." Norris raised an eyebrow, his piercing gaze locking onto the teacher. "Hard to believe," he repeated. "Let me tell you something. If it weren't for men like Grandmaster Kim, I wouldn't be standing here today. Martial arts isn't just punches and kicks, it's a way of life. And your job as an educator should be to encourage curiosity, not ridicule it." The room fell silent again, the weight of Norris's words sinking in. Mr. Peterson opened his mouth to respond, but no sound came out. Instead, he lowered his head, looking genuinely ashamed. For once, his usual arrogance was nowhere to be found. Satisfied, Norris turned back to Min-jun. "Young man," he said, extending a hand, "you have every right to be proud of your family's legacy. Your grandfather was a remarkable man, and his teachings live on through people like me, and hopefully someday, through you." Min-jun shook Norris's hand, feeling a mix of awe and gratitude. "Thank you," he managed to say, his voice trembling slightly. "I just wanted people to know the truth." "And now they do," Norris replied with a reassuring smile. He then addressed the class one final time. "Respect isn't given freely, it's earned. And part of earning it is recognizing the value in others' stories, even if they seem unfamiliar. Don't let anyone tell you your history doesn't matter." With that, Norris gave a slight bow, a gesture deeply rooted in martial arts tradition, and started heading toward the door. As he reached the threshold, he paused and glanced back at Min-jun. "Take care of yourself, kid," he said warmly, "and keep making your grandpa proud." Then, just as suddenly as he had arrived, Chuck Norris disappeared down the hallway, leaving behind a room full of stunned faces and a newfound sense of respect. For several moments, no one spoke. The students exchanged glances, processing what had just happened. Finally, someone broke the silence. "Dude, that was the Chuck Norris," one boy exclaimed, shaking his head in disbelief. "This is going to be the best story we ever tell." Others began chattering excitedly, asking Min-jun questions about his grandfather and marveling at the unexpected turn of events. Even those who had laughed at him earlier approached apologetically, admitting they'd underestimated him. "I'm sorry for doubting you," one girl said sincerely. "Your grandpa sounds amazing." Minjun accepted their apologies graciously, feeling a strange mixture of relief and triumph. He hadn't expected things to unfold this way, but he was grateful for the outcome. What had started as a humiliating experience had transformed into something unforgettable, a testament to the power of truth and resilience. Meanwhile, Mr. Peterson remained unusually quiet, retreating to his desk without another word. The sharp-tongued teacher who thrived on mockery now seemed smaller somehow, diminished by the presence of someone far greater than himself. Whether he truly learned a lesson from the encounter remained to be seen, but one thing was certain: he wouldn't soon forget it. As the bell rang, signaling the end of class, Minjun gathered his belongings, his mind buzzing with thoughts. Today had been a whirlwind of emotions, but one thing stood out above all else. He had stood up for himself, and the world had taken notice. Little did he know, this was only the beginning of a journey that would change not only his life, but also the lives of those around him. This expanded version captures the drama and emotional impact of Chuck Norris's entrance, highlights Minjun's growth, and sets the stage for lasting changes within the classroom dynamic. Let me know if you'd like further adjustments. The days that followed Chuck Norris's unexpected visit felt like a whirlwind for Minjun. Overnight, he went from being the new kid, a target of ridicule, to something of a local celebrity. Students who had once mocked him now approached him with curiosity and admiration. Some wanted to hear more about his grandfather's training methods. Others simply wanted to shake his hand or ask if they could meet Chuck Norris too. Even teachers began treating him differently, nodding respectfully when they passed him in the hallways. But fame wasn't what Minjun cared about most. What truly mattered to him was the shift in how people viewed his culture and heritage. Before, it had seemed like no one took his background seriously, or worse, dismissed it as a joke. Now, thanks to Norris's intervention, there was a newfound appreciation for the depth and richness of martial arts traditions. One student even asked Minjun if he could teach them some basic techniques during lunch breaks. Though hesitant at first, Minjun agreed, seeing it as an opportunity to share a piece of his world with others. Word of Chuck Norris's appearance spread quickly beyond Lincoln High School. By the end of the week, local news outlets picked up the story, dubbing it "The Day Chuck Norris Walked into Class." Reporters called the school seeking interviews, and social media buzzed with posts about the incident. Photos of Norris standing beside Minjun, taken by eager students, went viral, accompanied by captions like, "When your grandpa trains legends," and proof that truth is stranger than fiction. At first, Minjun felt overwhelmed by all the attention. He wasn't used to being in the spotlight, especially not in a foreign country where everything still felt so unfamiliar. But Alex reminded him that this was his chance to shine, not just for himself, but for his family's legacy. "Think about it," Alex said one afternoon as they sat together in the cafeteria. "You're showing everyone that martial arts isn't just cool moves on TV, it's a way of life. You're making your grandpa proud." Minjun smiled at that thought. His grandfather had always believed in the importance of humility, discipline, and respect, values that extended far beyond the dojo. Knowing that these principles were finally being recognized gave Minjun a deep sense of fulfillment. Still, he couldn't help but wonder how things would play out in the long run. Would this sudden surge of interest fade as quickly as it had come, or would it leave a lasting impact? Meanwhile, Mr. Peterson became a shadow of his former self. The teacher who once thrived on mocking students now walked around the school with a subdued demeanor, avoiding eye contact and speaking softly in class. It was clear that Norris's words had hit home, forcing him to confront the consequences of his behavior. While Minjun didn't hold any grudges, he noticed subtle changes in the way Mr. Peterson conducted himself. Gone were the sarcastic remarks and cutting jabs. Instead, the teacher focused on delivering lessons with genuine effort, occasionally encouraging students to embrace their unique backgrounds. One day after class, Mr. Peterson approached Minjun hesitantly. "Look, he began, rubbing the back of his neck. "I owe you an apology. I was wrong to doubt you, and to make fun of your grandfather's accomplishments. That was unprofessional and, well, disrespectful." Minjun blinked, surprised by the sincerity in the teacher's voice. For a moment, he considered brushing off the apology, but then he remembered Norris's advice. Respect isn't given freely. It's earned. If Mr. Peterson was willing to acknowledge his mistakes, perhaps it was worth giving him another chance. "Thank you," Minjun replied quietly. "I appreciate that." The exchange marked a turning point in their relationship. From that day forward, Mr. Peterson treated Minjun with the same respect he showed other students, often asking thoughtful questions about Korean culture and history. Though it would take time to rebuild trust completely, Minjun appreciated the effort. After all, growth, whether personal or collective, was never easy. As weeks turned into months, Minjun found himself settling into life at Lincoln High more comfortably than he ever imagined. His friendship with Alex grew stronger, and he even joined the school's cultural club, where he organized workshops on traditional Korean martial arts. These sessions drew curious participants from across the student body, sparking conversations about diversity and heritage. Slowly but surely, Minjun realized that he wasn't just adapting to his new environment. He was enriching it. Of course, there were challenges along the way. Not everyone warmed up to him immediately, and some students still struggled to understand his perspective. But Minjun learned to navigate these obstacles with patience and grace, drawing strength from the lessons his grandfather had instilled in him. He also kept in touch with Chuck Norris, exchanging emails about martial arts philosophy and leadership. Norris encouraged him to continue sharing his story, reminding him that representation mattered. "People need to see examples of courage and authenticity," Norris wrote in one message. "By standing up for yourself, you've inspired others to do the same." By the end of the school year, Minjun had transformed not only his own experience, but also the atmosphere of Lincoln High. Conversations about culture and tradition became commonplace, fostering a greater sense of unity among students. Teachers incorporated discussions about global influences into their lessons, highlighting the interconnectedness of different communities. And while Minjun knew he couldn't single-handedly change the world, he took pride in knowing he'd made a difference, even if it was just within the walls of his school. Still, as graduation loomed on the horizon, Minjun couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed since his first day at Lincoln High. Back then, he had been an outsider, unsure of where he fit in. Now he stood tall, confident in who he was and proud of where he came from. As he looked ahead to the future, he carried with him the wisdom of his grandfather, the support of friends like Alex, and the unforgettable memory of the day Chuck Norris walked into his classroom and changed everything. This expanded version delves deeper into the aftermath of Chuck Norris's visit, exploring its ripple effects on Minjun, his peers, and even Mr. Peterson. It highlights themes of redemption, cultural appreciation, and personal growth, while keeping the narrative engaging and relatable. Let me know if you'd like further refinements. As Minjun prepared to graduate from Lincoln High School, he couldn't help but marvel at how much his life had changed since that fateful day in Mr. Peterson's history class. What started as a humiliating experience had turned into a journey of self-discovery, resilience, and unexpected triumph. The shy, uncertain boy who had walked through the school doors on his first day was now a confident young man, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Graduation day arrived under clear, blue skies with a gentle breeze rustling the decorations set up on the football field. Rows of folding chairs stretched across the grass, filled with students wearing caps and gowns, their families cheering proudly from the stands. As Minjun took his seat among his classmates, he glanced around, taking in the faces of the people who had become part of his story over the past year. There was Alex sitting a few rows away, giving him a thumbs up. Nearby, Mr. Peterson stood quietly near the stage, looking more relaxed than Minjun had ever seen him. Even Principal Thompson, who had initially dismissed the Chuck Norris incident as just another quirky moment in high school lore, seemed genuinely pleased when she caught Minjun's eye and gave him a warm smile. When it came time for speeches, Min-jun wasn't surprised to hear his name mentioned multiple times. The valedictorian, a bubbly girl named Sarah, joked about how no one would ever forget the day a Hollywood legend showed up in their classroom. Min-jun taught us all an important lesson, she said, turning to face him directly. That, sometimes truth really is stranger, and better, than fiction. The crowd erupted in applause, and Min-jun felt his cheeks flush with embarrassment. He hadn't asked for any of this attention, but he couldn't deny that it felt good to be recognized, not for being famous but for staying true to himself. Later, during the ceremony, Min-jun was invited to say a few words. It was unusual for a student to speak outside of the designated roles, but the administration made an exception given the circumstances. Standing behind the podium, microphone in hand, Min-jun scanned the audience nervously. His parents sat in the front row, beaming with pride, while his younger sister waved enthusiastically at him. Taking a deep breath, he began to speak. 2 years ago, he started, his voice steady despite the nerves fluttering in his chest. I moved to this country not knowing what to expect. I missed my home in Seoul, my friends, and most of all, my grandfather. When I first came here, I thought no one would care about where I came from or the stories I had to share. But then something amazing happened, something I'll never forget. He paused, letting the words sink in before continuing. One day, someone decided to mock me for saying my grandfather trained Chuck Norris. At the time, it felt like the worst thing that could happen to me. But looking back, I realize it was actually a gift. Because of that moment, I learned to stand up for myself and for my family's legacy. And because of that moment, I got to meet one of the greatest martial artists in history, a man who reminded me why my grandfather's teachings mattered so much. The crowd listened intently, hanging on to every word. Min-jun went on to talk about the values his grandfather had instilled in him. Discipline, respect, humility, and courage. These aren't just principles for fighting, he explained. They're principles for living. They taught me to keep going even when things got hard, to treat others with kindness, and to believe in myself even when no one else did. If there's one thing I want you all to take away from my story, it's this. Never let anyone make you feel ashamed of who you are or where you come from. Your story matters, and your voice deserves to be heard. By the time Min-jun finished speaking, the entire audience was on its feet, clapping and cheering. Some people wiped tears from their eyes, touched by his heartfelt message. Even Mr. Peterson, standing off to the side, joined in the applause, nodding approvingly. For Min-jun, it was a surreal yet deeply fulfilling moment, one that solidified everything he had worked toward over the past 2 years. After the ceremony, Min-jun mingled with friends and teachers, accepting congratulations and sharing hugs. Alex found him near the refreshment table, grinning ear to ear. You killed it up there, Alex said, punching him lightly on the arm. Seriously, I think half the school cried. Min-jun laughed, shaking his head. I just said what I felt. I didn't know it would mean so much to everyone. That's the thing, Alex replied. It meant so much because it was real. You didn't sugarcoat anything. You just told your truth. People respect that. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the festivities, Min-jun found a quiet spot near the edge of the field to reflect. He thought about his grandfather, who had passed away a few years earlier, and wondered what he would think of everything that had happened. Would he be proud? Min-jun liked to believe he would be. After all, it was his grandfather's teachings that had guided him through every challenge. Just then, his phone buzzed in his pocket. Pulling it out, he saw an email notification from none other than Chuck Norris. Opening the message, he read, Dear Min-jun, I wanted to congratulate you on your graduation. I'm sure your grandfather would be incredibly proud of the man you've become. Remember, true strength isn't about physical power. It's about standing firm in your beliefs and inspiring others to do the same. Keep shining your light. And don't forget to pass along the lessons you've learned. The world needs more people like you. With respect, Chuck Min-jun stared at the screen, feeling a lump rise in his throat. This simple note, coming from someone as legendary as Norris, meant more to him than any trophy or award ever could. It was a reminder that his journey wasn't just about personal success. It was about carrying forward a legacy of wisdom, kindness, and courage. As the evening drew to a close, Minjun joined his family for photos, laughing and posing alongside his loved ones. His mother hugged him tightly, whispering, "Your grandfather would have been so proud of you." His father patted him on the back, adding, "You've made our whole family proud." Looking out at the horizon, Minjun felt a profound sense of gratitude. He knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy. Life rarely was. But he also knew he had the tools to navigate it. Armed with his grandfather's teachings, the support of his friends and family, and the unforgettable memory of meeting Chuck Norris, he was ready to step boldly into the future. And so, as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Minjun Kim walked away from Lincoln High School. Not as the new kid or the outsider, but as a young man who had proven that authenticity and perseverance could change hearts, open minds, and inspire generations to come. This expanded version wraps up the story with emotional depth, tying together themes of legacy, growth, and community while leaving readers inspired. Let me know if you'd like adjustments or further refinements.